get to introduce Frank Isoldi. I'm going to move this if you don't mind. I'll give it back to you in a second. So Frank is, I mean, it's funny. For as long as I've known Frank, you've been such a gentleman, and so willing to always help. I mean, from way back, I started in Summit, 20 years ago, and I remember when I first met Frank, he's like, if you ever need anything, like, I'm happy to help you. So I do appreciate all that you've done for myself and for Coldwell Banker in general, and you really are you're a good man, as well as an amazing real estate agent. We're going to go into a fireside chat. I'm going to pull out some questions. I'm not being rude on my phone here, but before we get into a series of questions, I'd love for you to give a little bit of a background about who you are and about your business, if you would.
Sure. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm in the Westfield office. My story is very different from Jill's. I'm a single agent. I don't have a huge, massive team behind me. I got my license when I was 18. My dad was a fireman and did real estate on the side instead of cutting lawns or painting. So I kind of was born and bred into this business and loved it. Neither of my parents went to college, so it was very important to them that I went to college, even though I knew that I wanted to be a realtor from a very young age. So I went to Drew University, so that I could come home on weekends and work and have a book of business, so when I graduated, I wasn't starting from scratch. It was kind of in my blood that this is what I wanted to do. So, so my dad very kindly agreed to open up his own office with me. So at 18, we opened up a very small boutique office across from this mammoth Coldwell Banker office, and we hung in there. We hung in there for quite a while, and then there was this woman named Marilyn Kelly who ran the Westfield office. She created the powerhouse that is the Westfield office, and she constantly was approaching me saying, "You need to come to Coldwell Banker. You need to come to Coldwell Banker. You need to come to Coldwell Banker." She's like, "You will be, a great agent within our company." And, I was very humbled by it and touched by it, but I kind of just let it go out of the wayside. And she called me in a very private conversation, the only way Marilyn Kelly could call you, basically like the mafia boss of real estate. And she basically gave me a wink and a nod and said, "I'm retiring. And I have your back, but you gotta come now." I went home. I went home that night and we sat at the table eating dinner, and I was like, "Gotta sell the company." And my dad's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "I don't know, this is our opportunity. Like, Marilyn's gonna go to bat for us." And we sat in, I don't think it was this building, but we sat at corporate headquarters. Keep in mind, my dad's a fireman with no college education. We're negotiating the sale of our business, but we were with Bruce Ziff, the consummate gentleman.
Oh, the best.
And we were treated so well from the top down that I would never leave this company. And that's kind of the story,
I appreciate you sharing that. I'd be remiss to sit here and interview you and not touch on one thing that I think is really pertinent to who you are. I started with this, but you just lead with such integrity. And I see how you operate in the real estate community, and it's something to point out. I mean, you're incredible at how you treat other agents. And I'm just curious, because there's so many people in here that would love to do the production you do. And yet, not everybody operates the way you do in terms of those around them. So if you could just speak to kind of what makes you tick in real estate, and obviously I started with the fact that you're a gentleman, but it goes beyond that. It's also how you treat people within a transaction, how you treat people in terms of what you even offer out commission-wise, and how you've operated in the marketplace for as long as you have in that way. If you could speak to that, and how, maybe I'll give you one twist on it, is how it's benefited you, because I do think it comes back to you.
So I'll never forget when I got in the business, commission-based. My sister's also in a commission-based business. My mom ingrained in us, don't chase the money. You got to be a good person and do the right thing. The business will follow. So our company slogan when I owned my own company was, working with us was like having family in the business. Like, we treated our clients like family. They weren't just a way for us to sell a house or make some money. We treated them like I would treat my brother or my sister or a relative. And that just came back tenfold. The other thing is, like, look around. Like, this is our family, right? We all need to work together. My business is only as good as the Westfield office's business, and I'm telling you, I mean, I am grateful every day to have all of them behind me, and so many of them are here today. You know, we are a family. We compete. Of course we compete. I mean, that's part of the business. But we all have each other's back. If I don't get the listing and Jean Marie gets it, that's great, you know? You know, I mean, that's wonderful. Keep it in the office. Keep it in Call Banker. Maybe I'm not the right fit and maybe she is. That's totally fine. We're not gonna, everybody's not gonna be the right fit for you and vice versa. So it's the power of this organization and the power of the people in this room that really make each of us successful, in my opinion.
Yeah, no question. So one thing that I take away from seeing you year over year is consistency. And you know, we can label it however we want: good markets, bad markets. You know, not a lot of inventory, too much inventory, whatever you want to call it. You've been consistent throughout. You know, it's like every year you're going to list at least 30 properties. Every year you're going to sell at least 40 properties. And it's, you know, you could look at the numbers straight across the board, and it's just every year is the same. In a market that's starved for inventory, how do you go out and say, hey, I'm going to go out and find, you know, listings, you know, today, not 5 years ago, but today into this market where it's more difficult than it's been in the past?
So, I mean, again, I've been doing this since I was 18, so 30 plus years, and I know it's not that easy to just say, keep doing what you've been doing, but that is the truth. I never let go of what I was doing. So, you know, COVID hit and everybody's like, oh, I'm not gonna spend money on advertising. I doubled down. You know, when COVID was here and nobody knew we were ever gonna sell a house again, I doubled down on my print advertising. I partnered with Waze. I noticed when I was walking my dog, every car in Westfield had New York plates. People were driving around trying to find a house, trying to find a neighborhood. We had pulled everything off the market, so at that point everything was exclusive because nobody wanted anybody in the house. They only wanted to sell it via video. So by partnering with Waze, when people were driving up and down the street, all of my exclusives popped up on their Waze, and they would call me and be like, wait, what's this house? How much is this house? And I would go do a FaceTime video walkthrough with them, and that's how I kept that business going. So, you know, you have to, this is the other thing. You know, Jill and I can sit up here and talk about what works for us and what's made us so successful. And hopefully you guys learn or pick something up from that, but it's also what works for you. You know, it's gotta be genuine. I mean, I think that's part of my shtick. Like, I'm not out there trying to be somebody that I'm not. You know, not everybody's gonna wanna work with me, and that's fine, because I don't wanna work with everybody either, to be honest. But I think you have to be what's genuine. Think about what your interests are, and then how that might connect to your client. It could be a charity. It could be you're a watch collector, you like expensive cars, you like to travel, health, fitness. You know, whatever it is, you're going to make a connection with somebody on some ground, and that's how you're gonna rope them in, because people wanna work with people that have similar interests.
Yeah, no question. So I know you alluded to this already, but you know, I just want to point out there, you're doing more business than most people in life, you know, especially in New Jersey. And you know, I spoke to the integrity piece. Every brand would want you. Like, there's no question about it, and we know that. But yet you've remained with Coldwell Banker. And I know you've spoken about this earlier, but I'm curious, like, you know, beyond the people of it, what else has kept you here? Because, as you know, when I think of like brand warriors and people that bleed blue, you're right at the top of the list.
So I'll answer that in two parts. So again, I mean, kudos to our leadership, because that's why I am still here. I mean, from Ryan Schneider down, I can't tell you how impressed I am with the support that we have from all of you guys, the managers, everybody. I mean, we are blessed in Westfield. We have had the most incredible managers, you know, since I've been in this company. Marilyn Kelly, Michael Scott, John Bradley. I mean, they're amazing, and they support us 110%. So that's first and foremost. When Compass was coming in and throwing crazy numbers at all of us, it's okay. I actually went and met with them. And I came back and I sat in Sue Yannicone's office. And I said, Sue, I just met with Compass, and her face dropped. And I was like, I'm not going anywhere, but I'm going to be your mole. I'm going to go through this whole process.
Sounds familiar. I did the same thing.
I'm going to tell you exactly what they're offering me so that you know what they're going to do. Because I didn't want to lose any of our agents. I mean, that was the key. I did it because I didn't want to lose all these amazing agents in Westfield, and I knew they were calling all of them too. So, I think that my love for the company is the commitment that you guys in the leadership position have for us. Like, you give us so much, you make it so easy for us that there's just no other place. And then this, like, to be in a room with 3, 4, I don't know how many people are here, to be able to call Jill and I are on the phone sometime at 5:45 in the morning, bitching about whatever the hell's going on in the world, you can't get that everywhere, and that's a big part of the reason why I'm still here.
I appreciate that. So I live in New Providence, and I'm back and forth in Westfield quite a bit. And I gotta be honest, we all think about like creative marketing ideas. One of the best things that I've seen in my entire real estate career, hands down, and it happens on an annual basis, is when it's the holiday time and I go to park in Westfield and I pull into a spot and the meter has a bag over it that says your spot's been paid for by Frank Isoldi. And I'm just like, this guy is the best. So I would love for you to just speak about how that came about and anything else you want to share about that, because it's got to be, you have to get so many phone calls. Such a classy move.
Yeah. So I love to come up with like something creative in that regard. So my mom used to own a small business in Westfield, and the police were horrible. I mean, if your meter expired like 1 second, you got a ticket. And people would literally come in and return whatever they bought in our store and just like, I'm not shopping in Westfield, this is ridiculous. So I went to the town, I was like, listen, parking needs to be free, right after Thanksgiving, because shoppers need to be able to walk around Westfield and shop. So that's literally how it started. Now the town does it. They took it over because they thought it was such a great idea, but it definitely like went viral. I walked into a restaurant that night. I got like a standing ovation at Sweetwater's. It was like, oh my God, this is Frank Isoldi. He paid for all your parking. It was insane. But like, you could take that, like that might not work in your neighborhood or your suburb, wherever you are. But I will tell you, when I first got into business, let's just say I graduated college. I'm 22 years old. I don't have kids. I have no, in-ground into all of these young moms. Realtors are on the soccer field with all their kids. I had 2 women that I still credit a lot of my business to, that lived in my neighborhood, that really wanted me to get very involved in McKinley School, which was not the highest rated school in Westfield at the time. The neighborhood has exploded since then, and I've kind of taken advantage of that because I started when no other realtor really was going into those neighborhoods. It's where I grew up. My father was a fireman. We were, blue collar Westfield people. But this woman came up with a brilliant idea. I donated a bicycle every year for the fair. I bought pizza for the kids on Fridays. I got really close with the principal of the school at that time, and I would help families that maybe didn't have money to buy Thanksgiving turkey or whatever, and it was all on the down low, nothing, it was very quiet. Those little things go such a long way, and they don't cost a lot of money, but just figure out something, whatever works in your community, where you can just do something that nobody else is doing. It doesn't have to cost $1 million. I think I used to buy one bike, then I had to buy girls and boys bikes. So, I don't know, maybe $500 for 2 bicycles that got raffled away. Those parents I would get letters, they'd put it in the newspaper. You can't buy that type of advertising.
Kind of lead me into my next question, which is, what other creative marketing ideas have you done, and what lessons have you learned in doing that?
So, COVID really taught me a lot because I had a lot of time on my hands. So I started to think about where the Westfield buyers were coming that I wanted to capture. 99% of the time, it was Hoboken, Jersey City, Brooklyn, New York. They were having their second child. They outgrew their apartment. They needed to get into a school district that they were comfortable with. During COVID, they wanted space. They wanted the yard. And I figured, how am I, a gay Westfield suburb resident going to get in front of parents in Brooklyn? And it dawned on me. They all, the ones I want are probably pregnant. So they're all in the pediatrician's office. So I have a full-page ad in all of New York's family magazines that sit in all of those pediatrician offices. All of my listings, my solds, my QR code, they can get in touch with me. And it's not expensive. It's probably one of the least expensive ads I run on a monthly basis. I can't tell you how many people call me and say, "Oh, I saw your ad in the family magazine."
The ads just got more expensive.
Probably. But so, I mean, I think my point here is though, look at your market, figure out where your buyers are coming from, and figure out how to get to them. And it, like I said, it doesn't have to cost a fortune. There's always going to be a niche. You know, Jill just did something that I thought was so brilliant with giving out coffee in the morning. You know, where the
And it paid for itself.
100% stuff like that is so interesting. Maybe go to your local coffee shop, brand a coffee cup, and for an hour give away free coffee. You know, I don't know, what could it cost you? A couple $100? I mean, even if it's $1,000, who cares? I was getting coffee the other day. The woman in front of me is watching my video for a new listing that I had just posted, and she turns around, she's like, "Oh my God, you're Frank Isoldi." I said, "Oh my God, you're my next client." And then all of a sudden, we started talking, and the woman called me, and you know, she's coming out to look at houses. I mean, they didn't even live in Westfield. They just happened to stop at this coffee shop, and I don't even know why she was following me, but literally, I had just posted this video about a new listing, and like, I don't know, stuff like that. You gotta get, this is the other thing, get out and about in your community. I am downtown Westfield constantly. I eat lunch, I eat dinner, I go to the bar, I mean, just get out in front of people. If they see you, they're going to become more comfortable with you, and they're going to notice you, and they're going to call you.
So I know you spoke about Marion before, and obviously you worked with some brilliant leaders. You know, John Bradley, George Krause, they're, you know, two dear friends of mine, and, you know, fantastic in their own right. When I first started on the brokerage side, you know, I remember sitting in manager meetings, and, you know, the person who was just killing it, without question, was Michael Scott.
Yeah.
And, you know, for those of you who don't know Michael, he managed, you know, the Westfield office, and, you know, just an absolute force in his own right, but then just a character as well.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, sitting there as a young manager and like learning from Michael and just being like in awe. I mean, you know, on two levels. One, he took every award that the company could give home with him. He like had to have like a little minion carry things with him to the car. But then in addition to that, like, he just made you crack up laughing because he called it like it is. So I had some, you know, some fond memories of Michael, and unfortunately he passed away, you know, far too soon. I'm just curious, you know, what you learned from Michael.
Everything. To be honest, I mean, Michael and I had lunch pretty much every day. That's when we were all in the office on a regular basis. We'd walk downtown, we'd have lunch, we'd talk about everything possible, real estate and non-real estate related. But I'll tell you an interesting story about Michael, which I think will just sum up, you know, his overall character. So the purchase of our company, you know, went back and forth and back and forth. The deal was on, the deal was off, and you know, Marilyn Kelly, like I said, was a total pit bull. And I would call her like, "Marilyn, you know, they're screwing up the deal." She'd get on the phone, she'd call Bruce, Bruce would call me. Deal's back on. I think the wire hit at like 9 o'clock at night on, like, let's call it a Tuesday, and I was being moved into a conference room. Literally, my office is walking distance from Call Bank at the time. I literally could walk all my stuff across the street. So Marilyn says, you know, we're going to introduce you to, oh, it was a Tuesday night. She's like, we're going to introduce you tomorrow morning at the Wednesday meeting. It's going to be this whole big thing. They kept my father and I outside. You know, they brought us in, and it was awesome. I would say 10 minutes after that meeting, this gentleman walks in. He's like, "I hear your office is across the street. I'm here to help you move." I was like, "Oh, great." We walk across the street, blah, blah, blah. It's Michael Scott. He's the regional vice president of Call Banker at the time. Doesn't really introduce himself. Here I am, we're lugging boxes across the street. We're starting to talk, become instant friends. And from that day on, I was just like, this is a cool guy. Marilyn retires. We're all freaked out, like, who's going to take over? And it's Michael Scott. And it was just like, this is amazing. And that,
He was no fool. He said, "Forget the regional, I'm going to Westfield." All right, so I want to dive into luxury here.
Yep.
And, you know, for those of you who don't really know Frank is, you know, you're just unbelievable in the luxury space. So there's so many people, I talk to agents all the time that would love to increase their price point, that would love to, you know, go into the luxury market, and they just don't know how to take the first step. So, you know, somebody who's doing it as high a level as you, I'm just curious what advice you would give to everybody in this room if they want to start to expand into the luxury space.
Sure. So just curious, like, how many of you here are already certified luxury specialists? A lot. That's great. For all of you that aren't, I am teaching a course next week for the certification class, so hopefully I won't repeat too much that you're going to hear today if you're on that class. So I think so obviously I did not start in a luxury division of the company. You know, my average sale was probably back then $200,000 or $300,000, which to me was a lot of money. But I learned this ladder approach. So when I sold the house for $300,000, that became my low point. So now I was an agent that was going to sell houses from $300,000 and up. And then you sell a house for $500,000. You're like, okay, well now I'm $500,000 and up. And then, you know, you hit $1 million, whatever. You know, start somewhere, obviously. We all have to start somewhere. Not everybody just jumps in and sells a $3 million house. But then just move up from there. If you don't have any listings, you know, look around this office. I am sure there's somebody in your office that has $1 million listing that maybe you could sit with, or you could sit the open house for. You're only going to meet $1 million buyers at $1 million listings. If you're constantly sitting $300,000 condos, nothing wrong with it, you're not going to get $1 million buyers. So that's the first part. You know, the first part of becoming a luxury agent is to try to get in front of those people. You know, and this also goes back to what I was talking about before, whether it's a charity or if you're into art. You know, figure out where your luxury buyers and sellers are in your market and try to get in front of them and try to be part of them. I joined a country club. I don't even play golf. But I knew sitting on that patio at Echo Lake in Westfield was going to make me feel like part of that community, and it works. People come up, they see you, how's the market? You know, oh, my neighbor's house sold. You know, that's all they want is information, and they want to know that you're part of them or like them. I brought two things that I think, if you're already in the program, these were game changers for me. So my family has used a livery service for various reasons for many, many years. So and they come to Teterboro, private, you know, planes all the time. So and I know this magazine's being revamped, but Homes and Estates, I customize, and they put it in every one of their livery cars. So everybody that's going to Newark Airport, JFK, Teterboro, these are sitting in the front of their car, and people pick them up they're constantly calling me, asking for more copies. I have a different publication, a little bit less higher end, but I also we have a hand car wash in Westfield where everybody brings their expensive vehicles. They're sitting right at the hand car wash. I take an ad out, you know, that's the only way you can get something like that in there. It's the same type of thing. You're waiting so the hand car wash takes like 30 minutes. While they're waiting there, they take out my magazine. Anywhere you can get your name out in front of high net worth people is what you want to start doing. Once you get beyond that and you get a little bit more established, and this could be done in two totally different ways. The trend report that Michael Outnew puts out is by far the best in the business. If you're not reading it, you're doing yourself a disservice and you're also doing your clients a disservice. But you can also customize this, and anybody can DM me on Instagram. I can actually send you a digital version of my magazine.
Set that back up again. I don't know why this is going forward.
So you could do it very simply where it's just your name on the cover and there's like a front sheet, you know, with your own information. I decided last year to go all in. So this magazine now is fully me. It's my listings, my photos. It talks about Westfield, Mountainside. It talks about my market area. I will say the first issue probably cost me about $15,000 to customize. I got 3 listings off of it last year. It more than paid for itself multiple times over. Now people are already calling me because I put my digital version on LinkedIn. Clients are like, oh, I didn't get my copy yet. I mean, they haven't been printed yet, but they're coming. Like, they're looking forward to this. I actually have a tree lighting in my backyard every year. We had like 300 people there, clients, family, a mix of everybody, all my neighbors. Michael Outnew happened to be there. We're standing in the kitchen. My neighbor comes up on the way out, and it was so great for Michael because he's like, Frank, that report you send us is so amazing. And I was like, well, this is the guy that generated it, so you can thank him personally. But these things work. There's a commitment, there's a cost. But you don't have to you don't have to spend 15 grand. For like a few $100s, you can customize the front of these magazines, get them printed and hand deliver them. I have mine all mailed out in, you know, clear envelopes. It makes a huge impression. The other thing is if you're taking on $1 million plus listings or whatever your threshold is in your community, and you're not taking advantage of listing concierge, you're really missing out. you have to make sure that you go in and tag your house as a global luxury listing. But the silver just sold and just listed mailers are a game changer. I mean, if you're not using them on every one of your listings, you're crazy. They get opened, they get read. I go to listing presentations, they're sitting on the kitchen table when we sit down to talk. They want to hear more about the program. I don't necessarily go all in with the black box anymore because I typically get called in now off a referral, but that's also a great tool if you don't know the person, drop that off the night before. I've done it with a custom video. You put it in a frame, they keep the frame. Maybe the video is just like, hey, I'm so excited to meet you tomorrow. Here's a little bit of my marketing material. You could do it all on a QR code, put it in a frame, drop it off in the box. It doesn't have to have a ton of stuff. You can obviously get all of the stuff from your office. I'm assuming the managers have it available, but there are so many tools. I mean, social media, if you're not going on the global luxury site and going down to the edit and pulling stuff about design and autos, I mean, everything is in there. It gives you social media ideas to post. The other thing is Instagram, Facebook. I know everybody relies on them. They're great, they're sexy, a lot of photos. You should also really lean heavily, in my opinion, into LinkedIn. Get in front of financial people, get in front of attorneys, get in front of estate attorneys, people that are going to be handling listings for their clients. I mean, that's a way for you to meet people. Maybe the clients live in California, but if their attorney suggests you, you're in. And if you're posting stuff like this in Instagram and in LinkedIn, those financial advisors are going to think you're next level because very few people are doing it. And it's simple. And this company, Coldwell Banker, is providing it for you. I mean, it's all here. You just have to take advantage of it.
So on the global luxury front, you obviously have built relationships around the world. And you're seeing, before many of the people in the room, you're seeing the trends that are happening in the luxury space. I know we started with, on a basic level, how you get into luxury, but what changes are you seeing? What trends are you seeing right now that, for those that are in the luxury space already may want to take advantage of or take note of?
So interestingly enough, I'm part of a mastermind group where, I am low man on the totem pole. I'm talking like Jade Mills, who sells $100 million estates in Beverly Hills, the Jills of Miami, who are like unbelievable. They are seeing a softening in their markets. So it's funny, normally New Jersey's like the bottom coming up. We're one of the few markets in this country that are still selling in a matter of days with multiple offers. Miami is starting to see price reductions, Palm Beach. So there is a wave coming, and I don't know when or if it will hit New Jersey. I mean, what goes up must come down. I'm an economics major. This can't go on forever. I mean, I just posted something today. The median list price of a home in Westfield is just under $2 million. That is insane. It was like $700,000 pre-COVID. I mean, $2 million is the median list price for a home in February in Westfield. So, and that's something that, every Westfield agent should know, like before they go in a listing presentation or talk to a buyer or talk to a seller. Like that's the other thing, and this is going to go a little bit off comment for 1 second.
Please.
What I learned is you never know what you're going to walk into when you meet a new buyer or a new seller. You never know what's going to connect with them or resonate with them. I started reading The Morning Brew every morning at like 5 o'clock. It's a very simple, quick read, and it touches on like everything. Sports, I stay away from politics, but, and the only reason I bring this up is today it spoke about Nike is going to do a partnership with Skims because they want to get the female back into the Nike brand. Well, ironically, my appointment this afternoon is with a young financial advisor and his wife owns a clothing brand. They're I think in their late 20s, maybe 30. Their starting price is $3 million. But I am sure I'm going to bring up this article about Nike and Skims to this woman because she's going to be blown away. She's a female-owned, apparel brand. And I would have never, it just popped up on my feed today. It's something I would have never been able to connect with her. I'll let you know how it goes, but little things like that I think are so important. Like a little tidbit of all types of information, however you can make a connection. I don't know if you know, but we brought over Brandon Newman, who used to be head of marketing for Aston Martin, who's now our VP of marketing here. I did a listing presentation the other day. I love cars, so this was easy for me. He had an Aston Martin, and I said, oh, do you know that we just brought over the head of marketing from Aston Martin? And the guy's like, eyes lit up. He's like, what are you talking about? I was like, oh yeah. I was like, this is going to be part of all call bankers, marketing program. I don't even know what's going on, but it doesn't matter because I had a connection with him. And that's all. You just need to make these connections with every buyer and seller, but especially in the luxury end. I find the more you can know about luxury stuff, and then figure out, all right, how am I going to get that hook in? The better you'll be.
So one of the things that I always find interesting is especially those agents that dabble in luxury, sometimes they get wooed by other brands in real estate saying that they're a luxury brand and all the things that they could do to help you in the luxury space. And then I personally hear our marketing versus their marketing, and I'm not necessarily blown away by the differences, and the grass is not necessarily greener. Yep. You're living this, and you're looking at all of our competitors, and you very much have to be competitive in that space and have to be aware of us versus them, so to speak. I'm curious what you find the differences to be and where you find your advantages.
So I think, first and foremost, just dive into what we offer, because everybody's going to say everybody offers the same stuff. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, blah, blah, blah. So, and this is, I'm going to put on my global luxury ambassador hat for a second. This company has done such an important job of branding our luxury division separate from Coldwell Banker. Black signs versus the white signs. There's something very specific when you take on that global luxury listing. It drives me crazy when I see a global luxury black sign go up with a white sign rider or a red open house. I mean, if you're going to take the listing, invest in the product. Get your black sign, get your black open house riders, get your black open house waffles sign. I mean, you don't walk into Chanel and get a black box with Tiffany ribbon. This is a brand. This is what we're selling. This is how I sell it to my people. Years ago, and everybody's got a different competitor. Years ago, I was up against Sotheby's for a listing, and I knew these people, for whatever reason, had it in their minds that Sotheby's, this is they own the auction house, they're gonna get buyers from New York, and they're gonna do all these wonderful things. I went by, I took a picture, we had this crappy house on Central Avenue with a Sotheby's sign that was half falling off of its signpost. And I took a picture of that house with the Sotheby's sign. And I put it in my listing presentation. And when I got there, I was like, what differentiates your listing at $3 million versus this house on Central Avenue for $300,000? And then I took a picture of a Paul Banker listing, one of mine, with black, perfectly framed. I was like, this is what global luxury is about. We have a program. We distinguish our global luxury listings from our other listings. Other companies don't. So figure out your market, know who your competition is, and try to just figure out how am I going to one-up them? Or listen. The other thing is this, just to be clear, I never talk bad about any of my competition. I'm very close with all the realtors in our community. We have a very tight group. It's not about bad-mouthing them. It's just this is what we do better.
Awesome. So you've been through, all different market shifts, certainly a lot of industry changes. I'm just curious, how has your business evolved through the years? What changes have you gone through in terms of how you operate?
So I think, and not to keep going back to COVID, but it was a pivotal moment. It was just fine-tuning everything. Really stepping back, figuring out what works, double downing on that. To Jill's point, weeding out what doesn't work, or figuring out what didn't work and how kind of fix it. But it was just really fine-tuning the machine. As a single agent, I had an amazing assistant. I couldn't do it without her. She's brilliant, and she basically, does 99% of the work. But we've got it down to a science. Our process is pretty straightforward. Some people say to me, as a single agent, how are you going to carry, in this market it doesn't matter, but back when the market was different, how are you going to carry 10 listings at a time? And I just went through the process. We've got this process. We've got it down. So I think it's just really important to figure out what's working, what's not working. The market doesn't matter, right? The market's going to be the market. People still have to buy and sell houses. Whether you're going to be listing heavy or buyer heavy, you just have to figure out what processes are going to work for you, that are going to be the most efficient, and you're going to be able to give your clients a service that they want, need, and deserve.
So one last question, and we'll open up to the audience. Yep. I'm just curious, you've tried a lot of different things, and I think too often all of us feel like success is a straight line. What have you done and just fallen flat on your face on and realized that, all right, I got to pivot on this, and what'd you learn from it?
A lot, over 30 years. But I think, because I saw that question and it was just like, just trying to be the master at too many things. Like we can't do it all. Even a team of 4,000 people. We all make mistakes. And we all miss opportunities. So, if Instagram's your thing, then go all in. But Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, you're not going to be the master at everything, right off the bat. So figure out what works. Figure out what you're comfortable. Figure out what you're going to keep doing. Consistency is key. I mean, I've been doing this for 30-something years. I've been doing the same stuff for 30 years, without variation. Because it works. When something works, keep doing it. Double down on it. Make it your priority. And when something doesn't work, instead of like putting your head in the sand, learn from it. Move on. Like, all right, that didn't work. Or delegate. Figure out what you're good at and what you're not good at. Get an assistant. And be willing to let them help you and do the things that you're not good at. I mean, AI could be a game changer. I'm a terrible writer. I wouldn't rely on it solely, but it sure the heck helps. Put some stuff out there that you can tweak and modify. And then just keep learning.
Awesome. I appreciate this. Who has a question? I see that hand go up quick.
So when you get a list or a listing presentation, and you said you dropped something off, do you put it in the mailbox, front door with a picture saying, hey, I dropped something off for you? How do you do that?
So, and again, I've gotten to the point where a lot of my business is referrals, so the introduction is less important. If I rewound,
bring you back up and you guys can both do a Q&A if you want.
I would probably drop the black box off at their house, and now I would do a video. I would make a short video, put it on a QR code, put it in a frame, something that they can keep whether they list with me or not, just to introduce yourself. You want to break the ice, right? So when you get, basically when I get to a house right now, they're like, oh, we feel like we know you. Because your face is everywhere, including the post office, I guess. But you want to break that ice and just have some kind of comfort level with them. So I would drop it off the night before.
Exactly, but where do you knock on the door, make contact?
I'm way too shy, so I would just drop it, run. now that.
Wait, would you ring the doorbell?
Maybe not. But no, yeah, I would just I'm going to drop something off at your house, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Okay.
Questions?
How you mentioned that you connect with lawyers and stuff on LinkedIn, so do you request? How do you connect with them, right? Because you have to request them.
Yeah, so, the nice thing is a lot of them have sent me requests first, which is great. But then you can go in and, look up who is a huge, let's just say a state attorney in your area, and then just request, go into the firm and just request 10 people. If you get 2, that's great. Once you start a rapport with them, you're in. And then maybe after, you've shared a few things, and if they engage, I wouldn't do this if they don't engage, maybe invite them to meet for a cup of coffee, or just, go to their office, or invite them to your office. 15 minutes can go a long way if you sit face to face with somebody.
Hi, Frank, you have a reputation for offering out 3% buyer commissions. Have you seen any, are you still doing that? Do you still recommend that in Westfield? What are you seeing in terms of commissions being offered out in Westfield versus just negotiating your side and asking people to, write in? I've done it both ways so far. I've been successful both ways so far, but I'm hearing that it's really kind of localized to certain markets being accepted, and also, the buyer's agents not being able to understand it, explain it to their clients and understand it, so the buyers get freaked out and they're like, oh, we're not offering on this if they're not offering a commission. So it's kind of a two-part question.
So this is probably the one thing that's changed most dramatically about my business in the 30 years that I've been doing this. So I've sat up here and talked to Jim Blue, and it was always get the 6% listing, get the 6% listing. I only take the listing side commission on my listing agreements. So 3 or 3.5%, that's what I'm negotiating, my side, my fee. And the way I explain it, and Jill touched on this, nothing has really changed. Offers are gonna come in, and we're gonna look at the net. There's going to be a net you're willing to accept. Right now, we're super fortunate because most of the stuff is going above asking price, and it's a pretty easy no-brainer. But all of my sellers are of the mindset that they're going to pay compensation. All of my sellers know that my fee is 3%, and if they're looking to buy a house with me, it's 3%, so that is in the back of their mind. But the reason I stopped putting it out there, quite honestly, is I found that people were getting single property buyer agreements signed on my properties because they knew I was giving out 3%. And I realized I am now doing a disservice to my sellers. Like, this is no longer, so prior.
She asked you to repeat it.
Yeah, so what I found was everybody knew in Westfield that all my listings were at 3%. So even when we couldn't disclose what they were at, people knew I was getting 6% listing signed, 3% out. I kept 3. That has been my mantra for 30-something years.
I could hug you right now, by the way.
So what I found was agents were getting single property buyer agency agreements just to show my listing and putting 3% because they couldn't get paid 3 if they had 2.5 or 2 on another listing. And I realized my fiduciary responsibility to my seller was now compromised because I know that this agent is going to sell this house for 2% or 2.5%. So I stopped putting that out. And I think it's trickled down to our Westfield market now where I haven't asked what the commission is on the buy side because it doesn't really matter. I have 6 buy side transactions in so far this year. My average sale price on those 6 transactions is hovering right around $2.1 million. Every one of my buyers is paying my 3% commission. The reason for that, I have now explained to them, and your buyer has to be a little savvy because it's a little scary, but I have explained to them, first of all, it reduces your mansion tax. It's only a few $100s, but who doesn't want to save a few $100s and not give it to the state? If you're waiving your appraisal, it lowers the contract price, so the appraisal waiver becomes less risky. And then they potentially have a tax write-off because they have a 3% closing cost on their purchase. It makes sense. Every one of my buyers is paying my buyer's fee. So I used to get screwed because I used to put 3 out and get 2.5 or 2. And now I get 3 on all my buys. So far, we'll see how the year goes, but it's been life-changing and it's been great.
So I actually asked Jill to come back up because you beat me to the punch here, Amy. I appreciate it. I wanted to hear, we just heard this from Frank. Jill, you kind of alluded to it before, but both of you guys have seen a rise in commission, in your personal commission, charged because of these changes. Jill, can you speak to your seller side of the equation?
Well, I had raised my commission about, I think, 1.5 years ago. We just decided we do more. I'm tired of not getting paid for that. Also, most of my market had dropped and been offering 2% out on the buy side. And I had been the only person left offering, and holding my ground on compensation. And, different than Frank, when they took that away, right, I started offering 2% out to the buy side. With my agents, we're having no problem getting that from the buyer. However, that gave us an additional amount. I will probably raise my compensation again on the list side. We just do more. And I think that it's all negotiable. I mean, the thing is that you're offering out whatever you're offering out, there are agents that will be willing to take less. So to Frank's point, when we're having multiple offers, you have agents that are cutting their commission, right? And I have my agents not calling and asking, but presenting their offer with an expectation. They're writing in that 3%. And it is so many times that maybe it wasn't even the seller. The agent on that side wants to do the deal. Like, it just depends on what the deal is. But if you can get your mind around with your seller that it really is, what are they walking away with? And if you can get your buyer to understand that their offer is going to be better, right? They're not trying to get money out of that seller. So when you're presenting it, right, then I think that's what we are all kind of missing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Questions?
Have you guys had an issue? Sorry.
No worries.
Have you guys had an issue with, Jackie and I presented an offer to a seller's agent, and we've written in our commission, we do it just like you guys do it. And they signed the offer, the seller signed it, and then during AR, they flipped out and said, oh, we're not paying you a commission. We ended up going back and forth with that. Has that ever happened?
You mean the buyer?
The seller, who had signed the contract. We submitted the offer, we put, you, seller, are gonna pay our commission. We were representing the buyer, and in AR, they're like, oh my God, I'm not doing that.
Well, that's because their agent didn't present it.
Exactly
right. We're pretty tight on our cover sheet that goes across and spells out exactly what that looks like, because nobody wins if it makes it to that point. The agent on the other side is scrambling to have a deal, right? They didn't read the contract. Like, the thing is, and I am seeing that quite a bit, we're getting contracts in where it's the Wild West and they're not writing their compensation in correctly. And if I hadn't read it, right, and gone back and said, hey, go and redo that. Like, that is happening, right? So my suggestion, everybody, I'm sure here, has a nice cover sheet that goes across and explains. Because remember, a lot of listing agents are also not that savvy, right? They don't know what to look for. And when we have commission coming from the seller, we're never calling it compensation. We're getting a seller, the seller is crediting the buyer, whatever, towards closing costs. We're not throwing it in that the seller is giving a bunch of money to the realtor. Like, it's the same thing, right? But so many agents don't write that the correct way. Well, in my opinion. Does everyone understand that?
Yes.
One other thing, this wouldn't necessarily have helped you in that situation, but I do on my contracts. My buyers, when they're paying the commission, I have them initial that spot of the contract, and if my seller's paying it, I have the seller initial that spot.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it wouldn't have helped you guys because the other agent should have done it. But I am very careful to make sure my buyers, if they're paying my commission, are initialing right next to that spot.
Jill, I want to go back to what you just said, because I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room that don't understand what you just said. No, it's a really great point. In the contract, I want to clarify this. In the contract, you're not writing it into the section of commission. You're writing it into the additional contractual provisions.
And under additional contractual provisions, we're adding, seller to credit buyer, 1% towards buyer closing costs. And it depends on what that conversation goes like with the buyer, right? If the buyer doesn't have money, and we have to also change the price and make that a seller's concession. But we never, ever, ever make reference to commission or compensation whatsoever.
So that really speaks to what you asked. Because instead of asking for a commission, you're asking for buyer side, credit, and now the seller doesn't realize what it's for.
It is so much more palatable for a seller to understand that the buyer wants a credit towards their closing costs. Why do we have to go and talk about our compensation?
Right. Yeah, that was
Perfect. John? Yeah.
It's just also, Jill, we've noticed in my office, I'm a manager for the Mountain Lakes office, that attorneys get involved. Everything's fine until it hits the attorneys. And then the attorneys for the seller says, well, wait a second, it was 2%, now they want 2.5% or 3%. So.
We're having the attorneys get involved too, and I'm calling them, I'm like, well, we have it signed, right? And the other thing is you also don't have to share your buyer's agency agreement with anyone. I've had some of that where people are asking for you to provide the agreement. Like the attorney, right after you've made a deal, can have that, but you don't have to share that with the other agent.
Just a quick question. You had mentioned on the 3 things that this helps as far as the credit that the seller's going to provide. How does that impact appraisal? Can you explain that a little bit? And just one other thing to clarify too, then on the contract, Jill, when you're putting in other contract provisions, the credit, you're leaving those boxes blank then?
No.
You're still
We're filling out the box the way that it's supposed to be. It's just it's just where you're putting your, it's divided up, buyer, so you gotta put it on the correct line item. I'm just not calling it compensation. How do they know what that buyer needs the money for? And Frank's gonna talk to his fancy little write-off. Oh, by the way, I took notes. Frank doesn't know this, but Maggie is going to be out there lengthening estate attorneys, also reaching out to Michael Altenew. And what is it, Morning Brew?
Yes.
Yeah. See, so I take notes on everything anyone says that might give value to me, and I send it back to somebody, and I implement it.
No question.
Frank still has to answer his little fancy thing.
I don't even know what I'm answering.
She asked you about taking off.
Oh, appraisal?
Appraisal.
How it helps with you said it lowers the contract price.
Correct.
But at what point does that happen? So is the appraiser seeing that there's a concession going back and they're lowering by 1%?
I don't write it. I put it in the box. So in the box where it says on the sale side, buyer will pay the 3%. That's where I put it. I don't mention anything. So we don't mention a lot in our provisions just because we don't want the appraiser to see a lot of that. So we keep that that's in our cover letter sometimes, waiving the appraisal, et cetera, and that's never in our contract. But so for instance, if it's $2 million house and they're paying me the 3%, rather than offering $2 million, whatever, 60, it's that much less that the house has to appraise for. But the appraiser doesn't need to know that.
Get my little workout in.
I have a couple of questions. So Frank, back to when you're interviewing for the listing agreement, are you telling your clients they should offer something, or you're saying, hey, let's see what we get in? So then every agent, a buyer's agent, is going to keep calling you, texting you, hey, what is your client offering? Are you just then saying to them, hey, we're willing to pay compensation, just write your offer? Is that how it goes?
So this also goes back to, I think, something Jill, somebody said at some point. Just say as little as you possibly can. Because the more you start to get involved in this, the more you get into the weeds, you're done. So basically, the way I've described it to my sellers, because they all ask what's happened since August, whatever. We basically take a 3% listing for Coldwell Banker to list your property. That's what we charge to list your house. Offers are going to come in. You should expect to pay some type of compensation. It could range, I'd say, anywhere from 1 to maybe 3 or 3.5%. And you're going to make that decision based on the net offer. If the offer comes in $300,000 over your asking price, I'm sure you're going to be just very happy to pay them 3%. If it comes in under the asking price, then we go back to negotiating. The way it's always been. Nothing has changed. It's just gone from one side of the balance sheet to the other. So, I would just keep it in very simple terms and just say we're going to look at net offers as they come in. In our office now, when we put out a listing, some people still say seller will pay 2.5% or whatever. I just say they're going to review net offers.
Imagine how much easier that just made taking a listing when you're competing with an agent that's saying, we charge 6%, although Frank is going to next week start at 3.5%.
John would love that.
So just back to the contract, your listing agreement, you're just putting Coldwell Banker's receiving 3% as the listing side and just leaving it open for the buyers, right?
Our listing agreement doesn't mention that.
I'll explain it. It says, what you're essentially doing is the seller may consider offers of compensation. So yes, they'd be willing to consider offers, but we've separated them. And we've done that intentionally because, just if the DOJ decides to make a move and decouple commissions, we're already there. So it's not a problem. Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, well, I have the mic. So for both of you, I know you were explaining how you do your advertising for a lot of it seems like listings, but also for your past sales, whether it's a sales side or a buyer side, how do you keep in contact with your past clients? Like, do you have a system? Is that something like, Jill, you were saying, like, you dropped the ball on? Like, is it you're just working with these clients now, but how do you keep in contact with them and how frequently?
So I have a whole client concierge program and my database divided up. We, every other month, have smaller happy hours. We deliver pies on Thanksgiving, wine in December, wine in January. I think next week we're having a lot of wine. We're having cheese board charcuterie making. I am big on staying in touch. Like, past clients are, it's shameful. I know, and I can't remember what that stupid slide said, but 44% of my business used to be from my past clients, and before that 60%. And you get so intent on chasing the shiny penny that you forget like the people that actually liked you. So, but nobody can remember everything, and if it's not tasked and there isn't a system, it will not happen. So we have gotten really hyper specific on segmenting our database, dividing it up so that it's not life-altering, and also I have added touch points to separate us from the competition. For example, if you buy, right, if you're a buyer with us, after you've satisfied your contingencies, you get a roll of orange bubble tape with wrapping tape that says the Jill Biggs Group. It comes with an orange package inside it. It has scissors. It has a little hammer, which is branded the nails, so that when you move in, you have them. It includes the paper cutter, 3 cardboard boxes, and the thing that holds it, the bag, is the kind of bag that you will keep in your kitchen drawer with those items inside it. And it's super, super simple, not like one of those tacky things you stick on the fridge that people throw in the garbage. It's the kind of thing that it's not in your face, but people don't really think about that. And I've done a lot of things to go like above and beyond just so that people don't forget us.
I'll tell you one other thing that's worked for me that's kind of outside the box. I do put a warranty on every one of my listings, and I also buy it for every one of my buyers. And the buyers is a different story, but I can't tell you how many calls we'll get from a client saying, "Oh, well, speak to Holly. Frank sold us our house 3 years ago. We're ready to list, and we're frantically looking. We have no client by that name. I didn't sell them the house. I was the listing agent, but they got the warranty. Their agent never followed up. They used the warranty maybe 1 or 2 times." And all of a sudden I became their agent. Not that I'm looking to take agents from clients, but little things like that are simple, and you don't have to pay for it till it closes. So there's no out of pocket. It's just a part of your closing cost. And I'm telling you right now, it works.
Would you remind them to re-up it at the following year?
Sometimes they'll call me because they're going to get a letter. And again, I have to figure out who they are, because they weren't my client. They're like, "Is this worth re-upping?" And I was like, "Absolutely." Because the other nice thing about that is you get an email every time they use it. So when it's 100 degrees out and they're like, "Oh, so-and-so on 123 Main Street just got a new air conditioner," I'll touch base with them if I have their information. Just say, "Just want to make sure everything went okay. I saw your air conditioner broke." They're like, "Oh my God." No other their agent's not calling them. They don't even know that it broke.
That's awesome.
It works.
Please, Erica.
So Jill, can I ask you to go back to when
Just
you
had a great
write in
idea.
the addendum that it's a credit to the
She just sold another house.
Okay, say it again.
Sorry, when you write in the addendum, going back to the commission and writing in the commission the addendum that it's a credit from the seller to the buyer, then how does that connect legally to make it commission and?
I'm putting it in the contract, right? I have that written in the contract. Like, we don't put waivers of appraisal in our contracts because I don't want to have a problem with the bank. But as far as that credit, that the seller is giving the buyer towards closing costs, I put it under additional contractual provisions.
Right, and then how is that enforceable as commission, or how does that get translated to commission?
So our buyers are all signing at 3%, so I have all of our ducks in a row, and we're just presenting the offer that way. Enforceable, I'm able to enforce with the buyer. Buyer's expectation going into it, and they have been explained, is that we are working for you to get the seller, right, to pay the compensation, but if it doesn't work out, whatever portion of that is, it's your responsibility. I just said it in a nicer way.
Right, okay.
Yeah? By wording it, the difference there is I'm getting offers from other agents where they're asking the seller to pay them compensation, and the seller's like, I don't want to pay them, let the buyer pay them. But the seller is not necessarily feeling the same way when the buyer asks for a credit towards closing costs, because maybe that buyer doesn't have enough money to close. They're not like immediately going after the realtor.
Yes, that's a much more smooth and savvy way. I'm just wondering, how does that translate legally? Like, if it, but it's
Legally, they're signing a contract, and if they don't like the offer we made, they'll come back and they'll negotiate. And sometimes we end up having to change that to 0.5%. Whatever that is, it usually gets you somewhere. You got something more. So then the buyer, when they have out of pocket, they feel that you worked on their behalf. You follow me?
Oh, yeah, I get it, yeah. And Frank, if I can go back, when you take a listing and you just, do the listing commission of 3%, when buyer's agents call you and ask what's offered out, you just write your offer,
Based on your
however
buyer's
you're gonna write it,
commission,
and we'll take it on a case-by-case basis.
Pretty simple. We're going to review net offers as presented.
Okay.
Period.
Any other questions? There you go. Thank you.
When you take a listing, and this probably happens, sellers say, if you also represent the buyer, will you take less commission? How do you answer that question? Because
No.
The answer is no, right? But how do you say it?
I think
It's a good question.
you have to, so now it's a little easier because my buyers have a signed agreement. So I basically say, well, they've already signed a buyer's agency agreement at 3%. So you sometimes can just get away with that and leave it at that. Otherwise, if you really have a pain in the neck seller and you want to get in the weeds with them a little bit and play, you can go on to the whole thing about disclosing, that it's not a straightforward transaction, and now you have to let every other agent know that your buyer is going to be at a disadvantage and who's going to want to show the house, and typically you can talk yourself out of that. But the simple answer.
Yeah, you have to put DV then somewhere disclosing that you have a different agreement, and it becomes somewhat complicated, right?
Actually, I'm curious, a follow-up to that. Are you guys doing anything in terms of unrepresented buyers, and if so, what does that look like?
3%.
Yeah, we're going to have to assign somebody to work through that transaction.
Preach.
Right. Well, that's great because John, I had my first potential non-represented buyer call me on one of my listings, and I basically just said to him, I was like, why do you not want to be represented? He's like, well, we're going to save 2.5%. He said 2.5%. I said, well, not really, because my seller's paying me 3% whether you're represented or not. So he was like, oh, well, that doesn't make sense. I was like, well, that's the agreement I have. So you can be unrepresented if you want, or you can call any realtor you want and be represented, have representation, and you're still going to be in the same boat that you are, whether you're represented or not.
I have this conversation every day, it feels like, and I say the exact same thing. I mean, these are two of the best to do it in the country, and it's just, you hear how simple and easy it sounds? Like, you just got to get the dialogues down and just be, you know, like Jill said before, just be confident about it. We, as a group, our entire company, almost 6,000 agents in the state of New Jersey, our commissions have gone up since August 1st. On the buy side and on the sell side. There's not one brokerage in the state of New Jersey that sells more real estate than Coldwell Banker, and our commissions have gone up. It is the best thing you could look at. If you want to look at any source of information, you could read in the Wall Street Journal, you could read in the, you know, whatever, the New York Times, nothing tells the story more than that. Our commissions have risen, and we're the best case study that you could get in the state of New Jersey because we do more production than anybody. So, I mean, what you guys, I appreciate you saying that, but it's the truth. Any other questions? Please. Yeah? Marsha, here you go.
This question is for either one of you. What do you all think about these golf club membership magazines and the shopping in the grocery stores, the shopping billboards? I just wanted to get your feedback on that type of advertising.
So, I mean, as far as the golf club, to be honest, if you're not a member, I don't think it's going to go very far, in my personal opinion. You know, those members want to see you. They want, you know, if you're part of the club, that's a different story. If you're part of the club, maybe you want to advertise. You probably shouldn't need to, but honestly, if you're there and active. I know a lot of my colleagues advertise in the supermarket. It's not my thing, but it works. Obviously, people wouldn't keep doing it. I mean, the key is just to keep getting your name and your face out there and figure out what works for you. And if that's an avenue that does work for you and you get a return on your investment, keep doing it. Billboards are popping up everywhere.
I think you have to track, right?
100%.
You have to be willing, take a shot if you think something is going to work for you, and you better think it through. Recently, I have a couple of billboards, and there was a billboard that had opened up, and it was going into like one of the tunnels into the city. And my last marketing person, who of course went out and got pregnant and quit, she was really excited because this was a great billboard. And billboards are very expensive. And my operations manager said, that's not our buyer. Our buyer, our seller, they're commuting on public transportation. They're not stopping to drive into the tunnel, so that would be a waste of money. So you have to really think through, right, who it is, who's getting in front of whatever that piece of advertising is. And, you know, as Frank said, like, everybody doesn't have to work with you, right? You kind of, like, if you're not in the golf club, they'll know you're not in the golf club, so it doesn't really make any sense. But I had myself on shopping carts years ago, and my kids used to go, oh, Mom, and I'd say, who is that attractive woman? But, like, you gotta track the business. My billboard that I have that says, we probably sold your neighbor's home, you're stuck at that traffic light. I've gotten half a dozen listings off of it because you can't get anywhere else, and it's funny.
So I'd like to give you guys the last word. By the way, I got to point out, Jill sold 4 houses while she's been sitting up here. What would you like to finish with? Because I do appreciate your time. And by the way, for those of you who stay for the third session, I'm going to be doing a whole session on events. And one of the things that I'm going to be offering up is a dinner with these two lovely people. So if you stay for that, give you an opportunity.
And there'll be alcohol?
There will be alcohol, and it'll be paid for by us.
You just lost money.
It's okay. What would you like to finish with, if anything?
I honestly think that the most important thing today here was said by Frank, and if you didn't hear it, I should have said it. Consistency, right? You don't get better at this, like, unless you're consistent. If you play golf and you never shoot golf balls, you suck, right? You have to do something over and over and over again. And the thing that we both do is we're like goldfish. right? Every day we get up, we do the same thing, we're beaten down by the end of the day, and we get up the next day and we're happy and we do it again. And that's it, consistency.
I mean, I agree with that 100%. And I mean, I guess I'm just going to leave, I know so many people are so frustrated right now with the lack of inventory. And people in my office are like, how are we going to get a listing? Everybody's like stuck in the mud, I feel like, right now. And, to your point about advertising in the grocery store, or whatever your thought is, as crazy as it may seem, Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Like, everybody got up this morning, made a commitment to come here. Like, that's a big step, but go home and do something. Like, don't just take this information and let it fester. Go act on it. Think of something creative marketing. Get your local newspaper, find out whose kid was athlete of the week and call them. Congratulate them. Send them a note on Instagram, whatever. People love when you notice what their kids are doing or their pets are doing. And think of something creative and do it. Try it. Spend some money. That's the only way you're going to know people.
Awesome. One more question. This is the last question, and I appreciate it. I see that hands shoot up quick.
Well, they're
Which buyer agency agreements are you using?
I'm using the exclusive. I'm just all in. I mean, the only thing that I learned a lesson, and I will point this out, if you really don't know the buyer, you might want to get a single agent to make sure you want to work with them, because you don't want to be locked in with them either. It could go both ways. 99% of my business is referrals, so I don't run into that often, but for the most part, they're signing exclusive 6-month agreements. That's
I see Jill nodding. So exclusives, and then just lock them in. Thank you guys so much. I sincerely appreciate it. A round of applause for Frank Isoldi and Jill Grace.
It's not always an exclusive agreement, all that.